Did you see I dressed up today?
Yeah, I know.
Do you know why I dressed up today?
Because we're talking about Jake Gyllenhaal.
So, you recommended 2 movies for me to watch, and they were Enemy and The Conspiracy, which is a found. I don't like the term found footage for it because it's more of a faux documentary.
Yeah, it's more of like
thing.
a. What is that?
I call it faux documentary.
Yeah, like a mockumentary. It's not really mocking anything. It's just a fake documentary.
Yeah.
Faux documentary.
Let's talk about The Conspiracy first, because let's just do it that way.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because Enemy might actually kill us.
Society's been constructed in a way to keep people asleep, to keep them in debt, to keep them feeling powerless, conditioned to deny what's right in front of its eyes.
Which is what?
That we're slaves.
So this movie, actually, straight up, never heard of it. I was going through my Movie Central on demand, and that's where I seen it. I don't know, like, I think even the last found footage movie we talked about, what was that movie? The Dyatlov Pass incident?
Devil's Pass.
Devil's Pass. It was a found footage movie, and if I remember right, we both did not like it, but that we liked, or we kind of expressed how, like, conspiracy theories and found footage are almost like a perfect combination.
Yes.
Like, found footage is almost like such a good way of telling conspiracy theories for some reason. And
Yes, except Devil's Pass fucked it up.
Vincent, what the hell are we here for? Do you want to know if the unknown compelling force is a Yeti or an alien or a Soviet-engineered Superman?
No, I actually really liked it overall. What about you?
Me too. I was quite surprised. This is probably the best found footage or documentary style, mockumentary style movie that I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a big feat in itself, but I really liked it.
Yeah, it wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it brought something fresh to the table.
Not only does it stick to a documentary shoot quite regularly, you know, a lot of movies like Devil's Pass, they totally drift away from shooting a documentary and are just running around with cameras for no reason. Or you wonder, like, who put this footage together? This doesn't make any sense. Why do they have cameras placed there? And this one, you don't really think that.
You never think that, really.
There's a scene here and there, you're like, oh, they're probably just wasting footage now, but it's to show character. They have necktie cameras, little pinhole cameras, and it's for the documentary.
Yeah.
And they're not running around with cameras in their hand. It's just, they keep running the whole time that they're wearing them, right?
Yeah, and it's not like it's for their YouTube channel or something. Yeah. It's for, like you said, a documentary.
So I really respected it for doing that.
Yeah.
As well, as I was watching it, I was like, the score is really good. They're actually like making me feel something about some of these characters.
The acting was actually pretty good.
The acting was really good
for like 2 essentially nobodies.
And this is probably the best edited, like, fake mockumentary found footage movie that I've ever seen. But this one, they were like mixing interview footage really well with B-roll, and then B-roll with spontaneous conversations, and it build momentum. It would build momentum.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good.
I found that they would do interesting things by putting in kind of like video footage from past conspiracy theories, like JFK and stuff, kind of spliced into the movie. And there was the one with JFK was really cool. They basically had like
it shows the Zapruder film
slow
the whole
motion,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, like the moment it came out, like, I don't know, it really played into like the vibe of the movie. And what I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was, but also by how un-horror it was. I was expecting a horror movie for some reason. Yeah. And this was like basically a thriller, like a fake documentary thriller, I would say.
And it stayed fairly grounded. There was only a moment or two where I was like, it's getting a little stupid.
There were, and they still had, unfortunately, a few of those lines like, we gotta document this, you know, and like, when I hear that in a found footage movie now, it's just like, cringe. It's like, oh my God, man. Like, how do you write that or say that and not be like, guys, can we like change the line or something?
Conspiracy theories are more prevalent in our society today than they've ever been. Terrence and guys like him, if they're wrong, then it's really crazy that they could be so delusional.
Why is the guy who bankrolled 9/11 meeting with the CIA?
If they're not,
Terrence!
people don't just disappear.
Like just the very basic premise of the movie I found interesting, that a good like one-liner or whatever. Oh, two documentary filmmakers are recording an insane conspiracy theorist,
Yes.
the kind that stands on street corners and like yells at people and stuff, and then he goes missing.
Yes.
And it's true, like if you're kind of making a documentary or looking into a certain subject or a person, and then they just disappear. It's interesting kind of how the characters handle it. One of them just full-blown gets kind of obsessed with what happens
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
And then the other person, I think, would have the majority kind of reaction here, and he kind of just was like, "Okay, we got to let it go."
Yeah. They had a little bit of dimension to them.
Yeah, you could buy into what they were doing. Too.
Yeah, they actually had. You could understand what they were thinking and why they were thinking it.
A few layers to them.
And so so they weren't just one-dimensional. I'm the motivated girl who really wants to make a documentary.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories are a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yeah.
And this movie did a
too.
really good job of portraying current conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
as well as pointing out what's fun about them and what's flawed about theories like that.
Yeah.
And actually, there was in the first 5 minutes, the crazy conspiracy guy, I'm pretty sure he has a George Carlin line.
I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you.
He's got like the string of dates here, and he's clearly connected them to like important events. Formation of the Fed, World War I, 9/11. It's all about this thing called the Tarsus Club, which is like a retreat for politicians, for corporate leaders, people like... That's what the dates are. That's what Terrence is looking into.
Very real and tangible shifts in world financial markets and foreign policy coincided with these retreats.
Camera down, please.
Has anyone ever tried to infiltrate one of these meetings?
And I like how they actually dropped the term Illuminati a few times,
Yeah.
because that's essentially what the movie's about, is the Illuminati conspiracy.
Yeah. Yet they don't use the term Illuminati for that group.
True. They
But-
call them the Tarsus.
The Tarsus. Thank
Yes.
you. Yes.
And there's rumors that they're like, not devil worshippers, but they prescribe to an old religion from the Roman times that it's quite dark. And I know there was a moment where I was like, okay, there's some actual skill and forethought going into putting this movie together. Was when they find out they're being followed by the black SUV.
Yeah.
Because it just, like you would, it just drops you into that scene. Camera's rolling, it's already waiting for the car
Yeah.
to come around the corner. Like,
Yeah.
fuck, yeah, he's still there. He's still following us.
Yeah. And that's
Whereas-
realistic because you're going to start the camera after that
Right.
starts happening. Yeah.
Whereas I'm sure a lot of other found footage movies would have done let's walk to the car.
Yeah.
Or we're in the car.
like, oh my
is
God,
that guy
what is that?
Is that guy following us? I think he's following us.
Yeah.
Hang on right. Oh, God, he's still following us. No, they just drop you right in the middle of the scene.
Yeah.
And that works way better.
Yeah, and that too, like later on when that truck reappears and the main character there kind of, it's almost like he gets less timid throughout the movie too, and he kind of like loses his shit, goes outside and starts leaving, and they drive away.
Yeah.
Kind of puts you in the characters' minds, of like their paranoia.
You understand
Yeah.
their motivation, right?
Yeah, and they do start getting paranoid too as they suspect these things happening. Yeah. And again, it does a good job because it's not a horror movie. It's not like you're like, oh no, the big monster is gonna show up to fucking eat these people. It's like, oh, this big evil.
The people are the monsters, right?
Exactly, yeah. And power is the ultimate monster in the movie. So like, I think like it all leads up to the meeting where they infiltrate the Tarsus meeting, and they get the hookup through the ex-Tarsus member who's been spilling the information about them previous in the movie. Yeah, and when they get there, I think it's interesting how basically the rest of the movie is through a camera on someone's tie.
Yeah.
Where before shit gets really crazy, where they're forced because they're like rookies to wait in that lineup
Yes.
to be initiated or
Yep.
whatever, and there's just the part with the machete, and they're like cutting the ties because just like they have that first person view of it.
It was tense.
Yeah, like you're not sure, do they know
Yeah.
that they're infiltrating them? Are they doing this? Is this even a normal thing, or this is a big setup, this initiation with a machete?
Yeah.
You know, and no, I really like that part. Super tense,
Yes.
like you said.
Did a very good job of that, and that there's even that scene where before they infiltrate, they're waiting to be picked up by their inside man to get them in,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
smuggle them in, and they're like hiding next to the road, and they're like, we could just leave.
I love that scene, actually.
Great scene, nice
Yeah.
little scene to just make you go,
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Get a
once
breath.
again, to show you that they're human.
yes,
You know, they're real people. Like
without crying and going, what's going on?
yeah, like there's this character too. Once you get to the TARDIS meeting, his face was blanked out, but he had that tight suit on. You know, the really like
The tan suit,
the
right?
nice tan suit.
And he stands out because it's tan suit, and everybody else is wearing like a darker suit, right?
Yeah, and I think that might be that Canadian actor with like the really skinny face. And
From
he's, like-
Cube, is he in the opening scene from Cube?
I think he might be, and he's like, I think he's one of the vampires in 30 Days a Night, and
Okay.
but without being able to see his face, he was such a creepy like presence in the movie. You
Yeah,
know?
because he just genius idea to give him that tan suit to make him stand out.
Yeah.
And he talks slow, and again his face is blurred out. They're in this room of blurred faces and these altered voices. It's really creepy
Very creepy.
and incredibly well done. In terms of found footage, this is like a masterpiece.
Yeah, I agree.
In my opinion.
Yeah, and a low budget found footage. movie.
Yes,
like
I
this
bet.
is no $30 million Cloverfield or
Yeah.
something. This is probably like
It was $1 million.
it was
I
$1
looked
million
it-
bucks.
Yeah, I looked it up. Probably Canadian dollars too.
That's pretty fucking awesome what they actually accomplished.
Yeah.
That just goes to show that story is kind of more important.
So let's talk about the ending. So as we get to know these guys, we know that I can't think of their names, but the one who becomes obsessed with the conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
he also has the idea of retiring to a farm community in Alberta, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of his dream to. That's one of those moments where I was like, why are they recording this? But anyways,
Yeah.
his dream is to settle down in a farm community, just to get away from it all, right?
Yeah.
And the other guy, he's a family man. He has a wife and a young, what are they called? Babies. Delicious babies.
Oh, so good.
Then the guy with the tan suit shows up after the first one's been initiated, and he starts talking to him, and then he drops the line, something about his wife and his kid.
Yeah.
And then that's when he panics, and he's trying to run away, and he's trying to call his wife because he thinks that they know who I am. They've probably found my wife and kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And he calls her,
Yeah.
and you hear a phone like right through the door that he's standing next
Yeah.
to, and he goes through, and there's the man with the tan suit who seems to have gotten there supernaturally, which
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah.
And you hear the baby crying, and then it cuts.
Cuts completely.
And then you go back to the guy who's still being initiated. The lights go out during the middle of his initiation
Mm-hmm.
after they put a mask on him. And then he walks through a curtain, and he sees that he's the bull, the sacrificial bull
Yeah.
that the Tarsus
Yeah.
seem to worship.
Mm-hmm.
And they chase him through the woods. It's like, you think they're going to try to kill him.
Yes.
And then we get to the moment where you think he's been ratted out by his friend, because his friend's waiting for him in the shack they said they would meet up in
Yeah.
afterwards,
If anything went wrong.
if anything
Yeah.
went wrong.
And he walks in, his friend's sitting there,
Yeah.
and then there's all the other.
Blah!
Yeah.
They jump out and they jump him, and then his camera cuts,
Yes.
and we never see
And-
him again.
Yeah, and this is where most sloppy found footage movies would end,
Yes.
and that would just be it.
Yes.
But then they do this one of the most interesting things I've seen in a movie for a while,
Yes.
where it cuts to them like editing the movie. There's even a shot, and they're like essentially being monitored by members of the Tarsus.
Yes. He's not even touching the computer.
Yeah.
It's like the vice president of Tarsus,
Yeah.
that woman, and sitting next to him on a couch, and then there's an editor working away on the
Yeah.
computer, and he's just kind of sitting there like not really paying attention, right? And then we see, I can't think of his name, but I call him the suit, the old guy
Yeah.
who is explaining, he's in charge of Tarsus or something like that,
Yeah.
and how the mystery surrounding them has caused a lot of people to try to break in,
Yeah.
and it's become a running joke to scare the shit out of people who infiltrate our
Yeah.
meetings, right? And you're like, oh, okay, but we never see the guy who looked like he was stabbed. We never see him again.
No.
And so it's supposed to be an open ending. Did his friend sell him out to save his family, and they killed him because he knew too much, and now I can't think of his name, but the guy who's still alive, is he going to be working for the Tarsus group, making this documentary the way they want it, which explains the blurred faces and the altered voices.
They basically explain away that he ran away.
Yes.
That he didn't get killed, they scared the shit out of him, and he ran away.
He went to his farming community, right?
Yeah. What I found interesting in that is then it leads you to believe, what are we to believe about anything we've seen
In the documentary.
in the whole movie? You know, like, that's what I kind of found interesting. Like, wait, this movie we're supposed to watch? Because don't they even say they're like, we don't mind this getting out because we want people to realize what we actually are, that we're not this big evil company, but they're the one fucking editing the movie. So, like, what didn't we see? You know, like, your mind can just go in all different places. That's what I liked about it. Is it just the ending of the movie that they're re-editing, or did they re-edit the whole thing?
No, it's excellent because it's a movie about conspiracy theories, and it leaves you thinking, you're making your own theories about it, right?
And that the movie is basically one giant conspiracy theory.
Yes.
And that's what's awesome about it, yeah.
Maybe that's why it's called The Conspiracy Theory.
Or The Conspiracy.
Damn it.
Which one of us is really crazy?
So Enemy, movie shot in Toronto, takes place in Toronto. I don't know why I'm starting off with that. Fuck if I care about that. Who's the director?
You don't go to the movies, do you? I don't go out that much. Is there a reason why you're asking me this? You know, maybe you had a recommendation.
Same guy who did Prisoners, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know his name. IMDb.
That movie was fan-fucking-tastic. Visual style was awesome. It had that yellow stained urine color.
Totally, yeah. Not a touch of blue in this whole movie.
No, it was very yellow, very sick feeling. Jake Gyllenhaal gives 2 awesome performances.
Yeah.
There's a girl that looks like Daenerys from
A little bit.
Game of Thrones. So I'm trying to think of the opening. The opening sequence of the movie is one of Jake Gyllenhaal's characters going into some sort of dark. It looks like a strip club or a brothel or something.
Yeah.
And there's some
or like an Illuminati meeting.
Yeah. And there's some weird sex show going on, but the way it's shot, you can't tell if it's sex or rape or what.
Yeah, what's really going on.
And then someone walks in with a platter, and they open up the platter, and this great big tarantula crawls out. And then it looks like someone steps on it, but it's hard to tell. A woman's foot with a high heel.
With
right?
a high heel, yeah.
So after that opening sequence, I was like, okay, so this is a movie I have to turn my fucking brain on.
Yeah, exactly.
To watch. And it kept my brain on the whole movie.
Yeah. And I thought after that scene, then we're introduced to Jake Gyllenhaal's character, who is a history teacher. Is it history?
History professor.
History professor.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to enjoy his life all that much.
No, he seems like a very timid, not necessarily depressed, but he's just kind of rolling through his life. He doesn't have any ups and downs. He's just like, And then Jake Gyllenhaal, kind of almost on a whim, stops in the movie store and picks up the movie.
Yeah.
Goes home, fails at sex with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then she goes to bed and he decides he's going to put on the movie.
Yeah, watches the movie.
And then we see, after the movie, we see first of many dream sequences to come.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he saw someone in the movie that looks just like him.
Yeah.
His doppelganger, if you will.
Yeah.
So that starts off the plot where he becomes obsessing over finding his doppelganger.
Yeah.
So using
amazing like one-liner too. Like I said, the conspiracy had a good one. Like best thing ever. A guy who's down on his luck or whatever you want to say is watching a movie where he sees someone who looks exactly like him. It's like, oh my god, that's so interesting. Oh, it's weird. Yeah.
Sounds like a Rob Schneider plot for a comedy.
Kind of does.
Rob
The
Schneider.
twin.
Rob
The
Schneider
twin.
is the doppelganger.
Anthony Clare, 3650 Rathburn Road.
Hello?
Good afternoon.
Hey,
No, I'm calling to speak
where are
to
you
Dan.
calling from?
I'm sorry. I think there's been a
Who is
misunderstanding.
this?
Okay, I'll call back later.
In this case, they were like identical.
Yes.
But then your mind starts thinking, do I have a twin that I was never told about?
Yes.
Do I have family? And
Yeah.
I think that's maybe what was going through his mind.
No, it's good. And Jake Gyllenhaal, much like in Zodiac, starts to obsess over it, and he becomes a little bit of a stalker.
Yeah.
And he finds out, he finds out what agency the guy works through.
Yeah.
And this is important, he picks up his mail because the security guard mistakes him for Anthony
He
is
thinks
the actor's
he's
name,
him.
right?
Yeah, he totally recognizes him.
Yeah.
Thinks he's him.
So he takes the mail, and then he calls him, and they decide to meet.
Yeah.
Right?
We get introduced to Anthony's character and start following him
Yes.
until the meeting, I think it is.
Yes.
And you meet his wife, and she looks very similar to the other wife.
Really, not a big plot point, but a really interesting scene is when the wife finds out about the doppelganger, but Anthony was lying about it. He didn't want to tell her that,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
And she snoops through his clothes and finds a note about it, and she tracks down the professor. I can't think of his name still. And she scopes him out at the university and talks to him.
Yeah.
I thought that scene was brilliant because it made me think of like, she looked visually upset, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't believe that she was seeing someone just like Anthony,
Yeah.
but was clearly not him because he talks and acts very differently.
Way
right?
differently, yeah.
And they talk about her being pregnant, and he tells her to have a good day. It reminded me almost like a first meeting between like a meet cute sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? Between a
Yeah.
potentially romantic relationship.
And,
So
and then
sorry.
they meet.
Then they meet.
Yeah.
And that's when things get a little weird because not only do they look alike, they have the exact same scars.
Yeah.
Which, if they were Siamese twins separated at birth, then the scar would be
Opposite sides.
yes.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're the exact same side. Which is interesting.
And if they were just twins, you're not going to come out like with the same scars. You might look the same.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the exact same scars.
No.
Yeah.
And that's when the professor he gets scared. He basically gets freaked out and he bails and he doesn't want to really look into this anymore. And this is where you see great acting come forth, because they do like a couple of two shots where they meet in this hotel room, and Anthony, who's the actor, is much more confident and
In control, more in control.
yeah, a much more
Yeah.
controlling person than I can't think of his name, but the history professor.
It's like
they hold out their hands and he's got shaky hands and Anthony's just steady as a rock,
yeah,
right?
It's like the introvert versus the extrovert kind of thing.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah.
And what I find stylistically really interesting about the movie is there is very like not even a handful of shots where it's like a two shot of both of them and their faces are both like in view. It's always like an over the shoulder or like
there was that really cool one when he barges into the apartment.
Yes, that one was probably the most clear, but
and they probably had to do face replacements. I don't know.
yeah, but the movie wasn't like, oh, look at us, what we can do. We can make two Jake Gyllenhaals.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not like they fight each other, and
they never really do more than talk to each other.
I was kind of worried that it might, because it was called Enemy, it was going to turn into like one of the girlfriends has to shoot one of them, and he's like, no, I'm Anthony. No, I'm Anthony. And then Anthony decides he's going to he starts stalking the professor now, right? And he finds his girlfriend, and he starts stalking her. Then you see him acting in the mirror that he wants to scare the professor into giving up his girlfriend for like a weekend, right?
Yeah.
Two very different characters clashing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's like a couple of love triangles going on. The professor's girlfriend does not know anything about doppelganger business.
Yeah.
The pregnant one, Anthony's wife, does know about the doppelganger business and has met the professor without him knowing. And now we've got Anthony trying to bang Inglourious Basterds chick, and then professor decides he's going to try to bang Daenerys.
Yeah.
Pregnant Daenerys.
woman, yeah.
And then something else really weird happens. The professor finds that photo on a shelf,
Yeah.
which has what must be Anthony with his arm around the girl.
Yeah.
And what's really strange is that the professor, earlier on in the movie, he found the same picture, but it was torn in half
Yes.
for moving the girl.
Yes.
So are they the same person?
Yeah. Then you start thinking that, though.
Yeah. Then, Inglourious Basterds girl realizes that the guy who's banging her isn't.
Yeah. And Anthony's big
professor.
evil plan is like, basically, I'm going to live your life for a week, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, okay.
She sees the wedding ring mark on Anthony's finger and knows that it's not her boyfriend, right? So she freaks out and demands that he take her back. And at the same time, Daenerys, I don't know what her name is, but I'm going to keep calling her Daenerys.
Asks how his day at school was.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she
Yeah.
gets home. And, you'd think she'd be able to tell the total change in character all of a sudden,
Yes.
right? Because she's already met the guy.
Yeah.
And she knows about the whole doppelganger business.
Yeah.
Right? And there is a moment where I think she realizes that she's got the history professor in bed with her.
Yeah.
But she goes on anyways.
Yeah. And even straight up says to him, how was your day at school today?
Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
And he doesn't even respond.
Yeah, he's just like, what? And
He's
she's
just
like,
like-
nothing. We should also mention about the dream sequences.
Mm-hmm.
And the recurring spider imagery.
Yeah. Okay, so there was the spider at the beginning.
Yes.
High heel going down on it. Then the second spider.
It fades into the dream, and the camera, well, you think the camera's upside down because there's someone walking on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's a naked woman, and as she goes by, you see she has a giant spider face, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a really cool shot. Very disorienting.
Very, yeah. And then there was the next dream sequence where it's just like this big, wide city shot of Toronto. And just like kind of in the back, there's just like a giant Godzilla-sized, like tarantula, isn't it? Tarantula?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the heated argument that Anthony is having with Inglourious Basterds chick,
Yeah.
the car crashes.
Yes.
And they both die in the crash.
Yes.
And what's really interesting is how is it the windshield or the passenger window?
Yes.
Fractures into the
Like a
shape.
spider web.
Looks like a spider
Yeah.
web, right? So I was like, okay, who's the spider whose web they were caught in?
Yeah.
And then this is at the same time that the pregnant Daenerys is banging history teacher.
Yeah.
And then we find this is where things get fucking
Super
crazy.
weird, yeah.
So history teacher spends the night, puts on Anthony's clothes,
Yeah.
and finds the envelope
Yeah.
that he got from the security guard, which belongs to Anthony.
Yeah.
Opens it up and it's a key.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a key to that creepy nightclub.
Yeah.
And he says to pregnant Daenerys,
Who's in another room.
who's in another room.
Yeah,
we see
don't
her walk into the
Yeah.
room. Spoiler territory going on.
I think we've already been in
Yeah, I
spoiler
think-
territory.
He says, I think I want to go out tonight. Do you have any plans? Or can you make plans? Something like that.
Yeah.
And she doesn't respond. So he goes into the room that she just went into. And she's turned into a giant fucking tarantula spider that curls up in the corner.
And then cut.
Cut to his reaction shot, and then it ends.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, yeah. And then you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Okay, so apparently, too, when all the actors involved with the movie, they had to sign a contract saying they would never, or they wouldn't talk about what the spider means to the movie, like in any like promos for it.
Okay.
So
I don't blame them.
obviously the spider is supposed to like be this big secret meaning or something behind the movie.
Yes.
I think there's two questions I want to ask, and the first one should come first. Do you think there was two people, or do you think it was one person?
I think it was one guy that's having relationship issues.
Mm-hmm.
He's having trouble moving on and maturing in his life.
So what do you think the spider means then? Or represents?
I think the spider is supposed to be the pregnant one.
Okay.
Because I looked up, I was like, okay, there's a lot of dream sequences with spiders in it. So I looked up meaning of spiders in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
and it's generally representing a woman, an overbearing woman, or an overbearing mother, relationship issues. And I was like, well, I think that pretty much explains it. And she's the pregnant woman, great big gut on her, kind of resembles the thorax of a giant fucking tarantula, right?
What do you think's up with the car crash then? Was there an actual Jake Gyllenhaal in that car? Was she alone?
No, I think that's maybe, I don't know. Is that the ex that the pregnant one's worried about Anthony cheating, or a symbol for? I don't know.
Is that girl even real?
Yeah, is she even real? I don't think she's real either.
No, because I think
she doesn't even really talk.
I think it might be something like, because why pick a giant spider that's as big as the buildings in Toronto and have that? You know, what does that mean? A spider just walking over Toronto. And I think you gotta like almost dig into like, is a spider supposed to be like society, like all, and he's trying to like get away from the norm of society, which would be wife, kids. And instead he wants to go into this like, you know, a full-time job as a teacher or something. And he wants to kind of go against all that and live his life as an actor who goes to like these underground sex clubs and, you know, like, I think the opening scene might actually kind of make the most sense with the high heel stepping on the tarantula. I think that's essentially the life he wants, crushing the life that he has. You know what I mean?
Good call.
Yeah, and yeah, there's, I don't know, the spider imagery, like when you really think about it.
Because his pregnant wife turns into a spider.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's so much that it's not like he walked into the room and his wife's there and there's a giant spider. She is the giant spider.
Anthony and the professor are foils of each other, and their girlfriends are foils of each other.
And it's like, it's almost like she's her before she got pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
but probably the most intriguing film I've seen in a couple of years.
For sure. And I love it too because it's not the Fight Club where you know for sure at the ending that it was the same person.
Yes.
You don't know. Fight Club, you can go back and rewatch it knowing the ending, and it's still a really good movie because you can see little things that lead up to that ending, and you're like, oh, it all makes sense now. But this movie, you're never given a solid answer on the ending. So when you rewatch it, your mind's always just going to keep like putting different things together, and you're going to be making your own theory instead of supporting the film's overall theory on rewatching, you know? And that's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And usually, like, it's a movie too, like, right when it ended, I was like, that's how it ends?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Then I thought about it, I'm like, you know what, that's kind of fucking cool.
Yes.
For once, it's not like spoon-feeding you an ending.
Had the movie ended with some ending where he wakes up in the mental hospital and it ties everything together for you, yeah, it would have betrayed the film.
Way worse, yeah. No, you're correct. You're completely right. Like when the pregnant wife goes and talks to him originally, the professor at the school, does he know who she is and he's just not going along with it?
Yeah, that's another thing, right?
Does she know that he's kind of crazy and is pretending
That's
he's
the one,
his
that's the
second?
scene that's hard to explain. That's the Jack Torrance getting out of the pantry scene in The Shining. That's the one that's hard to explain.
Yeah.
And I don't fucking know. What's really interesting is the way that scene ends is he's walking away and he's going into the building, and to test, she pulls out the cell phone and dials Anthony's number. And he picks up just as Professor Jake Gyllenhaal disappears behind the door, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, it could still be one guy answering the same phone.
Yeah. We really should know this director's name. We've talked about two of his movies. They're both really good.
They're pretty shitty.
Yeah.